is the 15th. Okay.
Are we on?
Yeah, you wait. We are on.
We are on. Okay. Okay, then. Good morning and welcome to your boardroom. It is August 30th, and this is a meeting of the Board of Supervisors of Ventura County. And I would like to start with a roll call, please.
Supervisor Bennett?
Here.
Supervisor Parks? Here. Supervisor Michaels? Supervisor Flynn?
Here.
Supervisor Long?
Present. And we knew that Supervisor Michaels would not be here today. She announced that she is out of the country. I'd like us to, at this time, rise and have a moment of reflection and take a moment to think about the challenges and the devastation and the hurt that's in Louisiana in response to the horrible hurricane that has devastated the city of New Orleans and the people who will be struggling in many ways to recover from that, and those who are lost. Thank you. And Supervisor Flynn, would you lead us?
Please join me in the salute to the flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move the adoption of the minutes.
Second.
So motion and a second to adopt the minutes of July 26. Hearing no objection to that, so ordered. Agenda review. Good morning, Mr. Johnston.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. We do have a few changes, none of them significant, but a little convoluted here, and I've got to see if I can follow all this. Consent item number 15 from the District Attorney's Office. There was an inconsistency between the resolution and the board letter. The board letter is correct, and we are awaiting the replacement of the resolution, yes, it has arrived as I speak. Okay, good.
Okay.
So 15 is taken care of. Consent item number 27, there is a revised letter. Item 35, agenda title only, the words "and water standby charges" should be stricken. They are not part of the action. Okay, item number 47, there's a revised board letter. And again, a minor thing, a duplication of words of the, it should read, approval of the bylaws of the Workforce Investment Board of Ventura County. And let's see, we have item 51, there's a revised board letter. The set hearing is set for September 13th, 05 at 9:30 a.m., not September 12th. And lastly, item 52 has a revised board letter. I think that covers it.
Any detail on that 52 revision?
52, on what the revision was? Actually, I don't know what it is. You want to go ahead and then...
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there actually was a revision to the fiscal impact, as well as you should have a strikeout version in front of you with just some word changes.
Okay. And that's that, Mr. Johnston?
That is all I have for now.
Okay. All right, then I'd like to ask for approval of the agenda review actions.
Move the agenda as modified.
Second.
Motion and a second.
I don't want to pull any items, but I would like Ted Myers to talk with me about item 22 and 42. If you could take that message to him, I appreciate it.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any objection to those items? Hearing none, so ordered. And at this time, we have consent agenda items 10 through 33 before us.
Move the consent calendar as modified by the...
Motion and a second to move as modified. Any objection to that? Hearing none, so ordered. At this time, we have public comment. We have no cards submitted for public comment. Anyone in the public wishing to speak to the board? I don't hear a rush forward here. All right, then at this time, we'll move to board comments. And I will start with Supervisor Bennett, since he felt it very important that we all be here today.
I do have a number of people to adjourn in memory of. We had some very sad losses over the 4 weeks that the board has been dark, and so I'd ask the board to adjourn in memory and welcome everybody back. I'm looking forward to a very busy fall as we get moving here. Thank you. Oops.
Okay, and thank you. Supervisor Flynn?
Yes, I assume you have on your list Monsignor O'Brien.
Did you have on your list that just occurred, was in the paper today, Monsignor O'Brien?
No, I do not have Monsignor O'Brien. Thank you.
If you would.
Sure.
He's such an important person, not only to the religious community, but to all of us. One time he gave an invocation here, and it was had religious aspects to it, but also it sounded like it came from the Ventura Chamber of Commerce. He was a great person. Yes, I'd ask the board to adjourn in memory of the people on my list, please.
Okay. Supervisor Parks?
Hi, I glad to be back, and I wanted to,
Hands-free?
and I got my cast off, so I don't have to use my rubber stamp to sign my name anymore, and I can also do other things, too. I wanted to give a little update on some things in the Conejo Valley area. Real good news that we had on Sunday morning in the wee hours. Our mayor gave birth to twin fraternal boys, Dante and
That's pretty cool.
Dante and Luca, and both 7 pounds 2 ounces, if you can imagine that. Quite a feat, and the parents are very delighted. It's their first children, and it's the first time we've ever had a mayor give birth in Thousand Oaks, so that's kind of neat, too. Also, we had some other good news. We were one of the first in the state of California to receive Prop 42 funds that were recently released, so we will be getting the 23 freeway widened, and that will begin within the next 6 months, so that's very exciting. Also, we had a major bust of an organized crime ring through a several-month sting operation, and we had a lot of stolen property from construction and landscape and equipment companies. And it was amazing to see the amount of stuff that was stolen and how many people were victimized as a result of it, and some really good police work I'm sure will result in some definite incarcerations. Also, my office is welcoming the Red Cross to a space that we had been using for storage. So now the Red Cross will be moving in. That will present a nice presence for the Red Cross in the East County, so people can get services from them. And in addition, we have some great training going on there at the Civic Arts Plaza for people who want to get trained in first aid and CPR and AED and such. And then finally, I just wanted to mention we did have some major losses of people who had died in our county over the last month. And I wanted to just point out 3 of them. One is the beloved mother of Sharon Moret, a wonderful citizen in our community, has been quite involved. We also had the loss of Glenn Patrick Cords, who was a Boy Scout Troop 716 Eagle, Eagle, but also a Scoutmaster of the troop. And he will be, he is already very much missed. Just a wonderful individual, really enjoyed doing the outdoors scouting work and doing a lot of whitewater river rafting and backpacking, and actually he died on a truck and through the Sierras. And I just, in his honor, want to share one of his favorite jokes. He was a huge punster, and it goes, "What did the termite say when he went into the bar?" Is the bartender here? Okay, well, think about that one. I also wanted to note one other wonderful, wonderful woman that we lost, and that's Mildred Lynch, who was on our on the Conejo Valley Unified School District Board. Just a wonderful woman, and I had just seen her a couple weeks before her death. Very warm conversation I had with her, but she was always someone of very high standards and expected everyone to strive to do their best, and she too will be very much missed. And I will ask the board to close and honor the people on the list that I'll submit.
Thank you. I have a few things to give you an update on. One, in the disaster that has struck Louisiana and New Orleans, the Red Cross will be calling on community support, financial, and volunteers. Those of you who may be listening or hear this that have time and some expertise, you can contact the Red Cross and they will be able to put you to work. They're going to need lots of people on the ground in Louisiana. Driving in this morning, I heard that a major levee broke in New Orleans and is literally flooding the city. And the statement made that every building in New Orleans has been touched by this hurricane in the sense of some level of devastation. And we don't know, of course, yet how much of the response is going to be needed. But those of you who have time, those of you who have resources, the Red Cross certainly will be looking for community support on this. The other is certainly most of you have read the papers or know what's occurred with the BRAC Commission and the proposed impacts to our county and our military base. We have the worst case scenario is what that maximum job loss that's been the number that's been in the local press on the 2250 potential job loss from the base. Couple things I'd like to say, and the work that's been done is that we also had some wins, and a significant one was to keep the electronic warfare operations here in our county. One, because I believe it can become a center of excellence, and the technology and the expertise, and having it based still at Magoo. And we felt strongly on that particular piece that was proposed for realignment because we know that it daily saves lives just in the technology that's used with the current confrontation we have in Iraq. The other piece is that this is a 4 to 6 year implementation proposal, and we will continue as a BRAC task force over the next month to do what we can in working in Washington and whatever we can do in the final staff write-up of the actions that are being proposed to be sent to the President September 8th to clarify what took place and make sure that we have the best language possible to lessen the impact on this on the proposal. The other thing to say is that there's been excellent work done over the years by RDP 21. In the time of the last BRAC from 95 to 05, there have been we've been able to bring in 20 new tenants to our military operations. So we went from 70 tenants to 90. We brought in the Hawkeye Air Wing, and we know that we're on the priority list for some significant improvements and movement into our county of the Coast Guard operations. So there's still work that's being done by the task force. It's not over yet. September 8th is when the final language must go to the President, and if he makes any changes, it goes back to the BRAC Commission. If he accepts it as presented, then it goes forward to Congress, and the final date for the ink to dry would be November 7th, as the current calendar shows. So that gives you a little more detail on what took place with BRAC. I've already had conversations with the chair of our Workforce Investment Board, with the VCETA leadership to talk about putting together a group to work with our county workforce job and career center folks to assist people with relocation, with jobs, with whatever their needs may be for those who choose to stay in the county. And those are going to be probably some of the indirect folks who are impacted by this, the secretaries, the maintenance folks of any of the realignment proposals. So we will be working to assist folks. with that reorganization, realignment effort. The other thing, I too have a list that I threw on the floor to adjourn in memory of folks in my district and from the community. And the last thing I'd like to just make a note, I attended Sunday, and this really was short notice, but I know all the board members have received the information on a retirement party for Diana Vogelbaum, and it was at the rain shelter in the cafeteria. And what was so wonderful and warm about it is that it really was within a 10-day notice organization to celebrate Diana's retirement and to dedicate the cafeteria. It is now going to be called Diana's Diner. And they went together and bought a neon sign that is scripted that says Diana's Diner in purple. And it was just a marvelous, warm, fun, loving event. And I spoke on behalf of the board, and certainly that, I'm sure you were all there present in spirit and support of the good work that Diana's provided us over the years. So if you get a chance to get out to the rain shelter, go and look at Diana's Diner. It was a great celebration. And that ends the board comments. Anyone else? Yes, absolutely.
I'd like to, I've already notified the board in writing, and there's been something in the paper, but also in your absence, there was another unexpected change in administration with Scott Smith's making a decision for family reasons. He's moving to Texas, has resigned, and which is a loss to the organization. But the good news is that he had a very able staff, well-trained, and Todd McNamee, who is here. Todd, would you? Todd has accepted the offer to be the new director of the airport system. Todd is it about 5 years or almost 5 years?
Almost 5 years.
Almost 5 as the assistant running the daily operations out there. He has a good general education, and he's a certified airport manager. He has worked closely with Scott on all of the projects, and Scott has offered to stay with us on a consulting basis to see 2 or 3 of the projects that were underway to conclusion. So, Todd, welcome. Not that you're a new face, but in a new capacity, and we appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your confidence in making the appointment, and it's been great. There's been a lot of support from the board, staff, businesses, and users at the airport, so I'm very grateful to have a talented staff and a great support network as well. And Scott's been a great director, a great friend, and a great mentor for me, and they're big shoes to fill, and I look forward to the challenge, and I really look forward to working with all of you.
Thanks for coming in this morning.
Yeah.
And
we
if you'll
welcome
keep
you.
us posted about how you're filling your position and, all of that. I mean, recruitment is a big issue for us, and so
We've actually, I'm a big believer in promoting from within when I have capable staff, and I believe I do. So we've already started that process with Human Resources for an internal departmental promotion.
Great.
Good.
So we want to keep that moving because it's tough trying to fill both positions.
Great, thank you.
And the air show was very successful.
Thank you. Yeah, they did a great job. It was just wonderful.
Camarillo Air Show this past weekend was fun.
Thank you.
Good. Good. Thanks. Thank you for remembering. I always assume he's here on an item, but thank you. All right, board members, that completes the opening of our agenda, and we can move now to, let me see, our first item past our time certain stuff is our agricultural commissioner, Mr. McPhail, item 37.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Johnny Johnston, pleasure to be back here again, I guess. Item 37 is a standard contract that we've had for a number of years with the California Department of Food and Agriculture to cover our costs for citrus maturity testing, which will be starting here towards the end of September, October, for $21,998.33.
Motion and a second. Any objection to the item? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you, sir. Item 38.
Item 38 is a ongoing, basically pass-through. We kind of pass the money through thanks to Christine's office. This is money that California grape growers have put up to help nurserymen treat for glassy wing sharpshooter. They're allowed to treat the whole nursery one time during the year. They get their treatment costs back. We only used a a little bit of the money last year, and we still have about $600,000 left in that account, and we assume we're only going to spend about $150,000 that this year. So I assume that maybe carried over again. I'm not sure, but basically we're just the pass-through agency and the certification agency that the treatments have been done.
Move the rec- Second.
Motion and a second. Any objection to that item? Hearing none, so ordered.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Got stuff in front of me, I can load it down here. And our next item is 39, our Older Americans Act, and good morning, Ms. Jump.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnston. Once again, this is another ratification from our agency of a contract for last year. This one contains no new money, and it just moves money between categories in our budget. And your approval will allow us to submit our closeout paperwork to the state.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any objection to that? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you so much. Next up, we have the Healthcare Agency, item 40, ratification approval of reimbursement agreement with Santa Paula Hospital. Good morning, Mr. Watson.
Good morning. As you know, the county does not yet own the Santa Paula Hospital. It's in the legal possession of the Post-Bankruptcy Confirmation Committee. On August 16th, we entered into a reimbursement agreement with the committee, and that concerned 3 items of interest. We're here today to ask for approval and ratification of that agreement. The 3 areas addressed in the reimbursement agreement include reimbursement for security costs that we are incurring and have been incurring since about June. Second, retention of an on-site medical records custodian who's performing functions for the committee and for us as well. And third, a mutual indemnification and reimbursement agreement or clause related to an asbestos abatement project which we began the week of the 16th. We needed to enter into that agreement prior to the asbestos project beginning, and we needed to begin that asbestos project immediately in order to not delay the renovation and ultimate reopening of the hospital, hence the need for the ratification of the agreement that we signed on the 16th. And the details of the agreement are highlighted in the board letter, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Other questions? I'd like to move the item. Motion and second. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's good work. I know there were some challenges with that. Item 41, a ratification approval of the California Healthcare for Indigent Program Fund. Good morning, Mrs. Davis.
Good morning, members of the board. Mr. Johnson, I'm Karen Davis, Deputy Director for the Healthcare Agency. The item before you is to request ratification and approval for the application for the California Healthcare for Indigent program. This is an annual program that's been going on for 15 years. It is necessary to ask for ratification since the allocation was not received until August 10th of this year. The amount of funding with this application will release tobacco tax funding for this year, and we expect to receive approximately $643,000.
And I'll second it, and I just wanted to note that according to the report, the amount of money has decreased by 88% over the last 15 years.
Very significant.
That has been well-used money, and it will be difficult to see it continue to dwindle. But I guess on the bright side, the reason it's dwindling, isn't it, because of the tobacco? There isn't as much people smoking cigarettes, so we're not having as much tax on that.
Motion and second. Any objection?
Just a comment.
Comment?
Follow up on Supervisor Parks. And that's why we have to be so cautious with all of our tobacco funds coming in, because they're all in this declining mode.
Mm-hmm. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Thank you. Item 42, authorization to accept 0608 Child Abuse Prevention Intervention Treatment Funds.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnston,
Morning.
Paul Lorenz, Public Health Department. This is authorization to accept $248,000 over the next 3 years in CAPIT funds, which is Child Abuse Prevention Intervention Treatment Funds. On the consent agenda this morning, your board approved the overall CAPIT program. This is one of the efforts that the overall CAPIT committee approved for funding or recommend for funding to your board. is to provide home visitation and early intervention services to children that are at risk for entering the child welfare system. Currently, we have a project that provides intervention services for children that are currently in Child Protective Services, and the program has proved very successful, both in terms of employee morale as well as service to the clients.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Second.
So motion and a second. Hearing no objection. So ordered. Thank you. It is a good program. Okay, next up is item 43. Ratification, approval, submission, acceptance of grant from Blue Shield Foundation. Good morning.
Madam Chair,
Mr.
board
Powers.
members, Mr. Johnson, Mike Powers with the Healthcare Agency. This first item here is for grant funding for the hospital to participate in a national quality improvement program. It involves data tracking and analysis in certain high-risk areas. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Motion and a second. Any objection to that? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you.
This next item is to increase purchase order contracts for staffing, construction, and information technology costs for last fiscal year. There were some overruns due to increased census and some additional projects. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on item 44?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you. Next up, Human Services Agency items. We have item 45 first, which is a ratification approval of a grant award from the Ventura County Children and Families First Commission.
Hi, good morning, Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Guerra.
members of the board, Mr. Johnston. The first item that we have here today is the ratification for grant approval from Ventura County Children and Families First Commission for a respite program that we have within our department. Essentially, the respite program has contributed to the retention of foster parents, kinship providers, and to the respective placements. The program serves as a safety net for caregivers that can access quality and convenient child care when unexpected events occur or when foster parents just need a break.
I'd like to move the recommended action and also point out that we're having a growing number of foster parents who are taking advantage of the respite care program. And as that number grows, I think we'll be using the respite care providers more and more, and I think they'll feel satisfied, and it'll be time for us to recruit more respite care providers at this point in time. But what a great asset for the foster parents to have somebody to give them a break.
It's a lifesaver.
Do you find that people who join the respite program, which, take in foster children for a short period of time to give a rest to the foster parents, that they then may become foster parents themselves?
Sometimes, to be quite honest, we haven't tracked that trend. Most of the time, they come into the program intending to be respite parents rather than foster parents, knowing that they want to contribute to the effort in some way.
And just can't do it full-time, but can do it part-time. Well, it certainly increases the need for those respite parents.
Yeah, I would pass it in the recruitment. That was almost always the situation in recruiting, as people said, I want to do something, but my lifestyle is such that I can't take, 1 week out of each month I'm gone or whatever. And those are the people that are attracted to the respite program. Move the recommended action.
Thank you.
Motion and a second. Hearing no objection, so ordered. It's an excellent program, and I was pleased to see a booth. I want to say some fiesta, that we had a booth over the summer for foster care and foster kids. So
Good.
It was good to see it. One of those things I went to. Next up is item 46, ratification approval of a grant application to the State Child Welfare Services.
If you'll remember, in September of 2004, I came before this board and presented our system improvement plan as a result of Assembly Bill 636. To our pleasant surprise, the state offered us a one-time funding opportunity in early August. We needed to reply by August 13th to that. Essentially, we have asked that this one-time funding be used for a coordinator for our Best Match project, which really represents the interconnectedness of so many of our other initiatives. It'll also allow us to establish a quality assurance program within our system, so that we'll be able to effectively monitor all of the outcomes for which we're responsible.
Questions?
Great. Second.
Motion and a second. Hearing no objection. Good work. Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
ordered. Okay, item 47, approval of the bylaws of the Workforce Investment Board of Ventura County. And good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, honorable members of the board, and Mr. Johnston. Elaine Crandall with the Workforce Investment Board of the Human Services Agency. In May of 2004, your board executed a memorandum of understanding with the Workforce Investment Board that identified the separate and shared responsibilities in connection with WIA operations and governance. In this MOU, it specified that the WIB shall operate according to approved and adopted bylaws by your board. The bylaws submitted for your consideration have been modified to include the reorganizing and retitling of sections to clarify and simplify language, to be consistent with WIA, to comply with the Ralph-Brown Act. Some highlighted policy changes include the elimination of term limits with the requirement for reappointment every 2 years, and the membership and executive committees established as standing committees and procedure for naming vice chair for these committees. Today, the WIB bylaws are presented to you with a request for approval and authorization of signature by your chair.
Questions?
I don't have a question, just a comment. I just appreciate getting this cleaned up. We kind of had this out there sort of hanging and stuff, so I appreciate the work on this.
Thank you.
Kind of a nice way to get us started here as we started.
Absolutely.
I'll move the recommended action.
Motion and a second. Hearing no further questions? No objections? So ordered. And our next item is a reappointment of the WIB Investment Board current members.
Related to this issue, on April 26th of this year, the WIB requested your board consider the recommendation to reappoint members. Without the approved bylaws in place, a 6-month extension was granted. With now the approval of the WIB bylaws, today's recommendation is to extend the reappointment of 12 members for the 2-year term, all of whom were previously appointed by your board.
Is a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second for reappointment. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. Item 49, do we have someone here from the Clerk Recorder's Office? It's to appoint Art Goulet as a retired member of the W.E.A. Hogue, and W.E.A. Hogue as the alternate retired member of the Retirement Board. Any questions of the board?
Not really a question so much as a comment that I think, from my understanding, there really isn't an election. They're just being appointed in lieu of election. And this gets back to one of my frustrations, that we don't do a good job, and we all have to take responsibility for it, of letting the public know when there are openings, because otherwise we don't get a broad amount of people participating in government. And I think it is really important for good decision-making to open up government as best that we can, and I'm doing as much as I can out in the Conejo Valley to make sure that any opening gets good media attention and all kind of notifications that I can provide. This frustrates me to see.
Let me just ask, I think this may be a specified appointment of someone from the Retirement Board, but I agree fully with your statements. This one, it's pretty narrowed, what you can do. I move the appointment.
It's a motion
Second.
and a second. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Good comments. Next item up is item 50, which is receive and file the certification of the general member retirement election. And it's pretty self-explanatory. Motion? There's a motion and a second? Yeah, all right. Motion and a second, hearing no objection. So ordered. All right, then, item 51, County Executive Officer, public hearing regarding the adoption of the 0508 MOA with the International Union of Operating Engineers, and that's going to be covered by our CEO.
Where's John, the other John? I don't see him.
Shall we trail it?
I don't know if he wanted to come down and make any comment on it. It's, I think, another example of the relationship his office, the good relationship his office has with the various unions, and bringing these things in on time with minimum amount of acrimony. We would certainly recommend that you approve this agreement.
It's a motion.
I'll second, and congratulations to both parties for working this out and getting it in on time.
And I would echo that comment and just emphasize, I think we've had a real renaissance in our labor negotiations, and we've really seen the fruit of that over the last 6 months as, you know, contract after contract has been settled. And so my compliments to the CEO and his staff for creating that. I think we made that a priority a number of years ago, and it's actually translated into action, so congratulations.
Absolutely has. Motion and second, hearing no objection, so ordered. Item 52, approval of an increase to the flexible credit allowance for part-time Ventura County Deputy Sheriff Association represented employees. And that is going to be covered by...
Yeah, I guess I'll handle this one too,
Okay.
not having seen John arrive. This is more cleanup. It is the consequence of other actions that were taken earlier regarding flexible credits. That turns out that there are several part-time positions that were not covered in the language when we approved this last time that need to be caught up. And there's also a compaction relationship issue in the fire service regarding the medical technician pay. So we would recommend that you, John's here, do you have any questions?
Any questions on this item? This is 52. Pleasure of the board.
Second.
Motion and a second, hearing no objection, so ordered. Item 53, approval of the flexible benefits program, health benefits, rates, and contracts for plan year 206.
Good morning, Chair Long, members of the board. This is an annual event that occurs that we present the medical rates for medical benefits, dental and vision, and what's before you is quite a lengthy letter, and I'll just try to summarize just briefly some of the highlights and points that went into getting us to this point of presenting the rates here. As far as the medical rates, I'll start with the medical programs at this point in time. We renegotiated our rates with Pacific Care, and this is the third year of their contract. It had no cap on the rates, so we were concerned and worked all year in making sure our utilizations were appropriate and within our targets, and they did fall in well below the targets, and thus we had an extremely favorable rating for our Pacific Care contracts, that the carrier premium only went up 4.6% on the HMO and 7.9% on the PPO, which is significantly better than industry and the trend in California at this point in time. We were very pleased with that. The county health care plan did have a significant increase in their rates due to some utilization activity and other things that are characteristic of the medical industry with the costs associated with providing care. However, even with the significant rate increase, the absolute dollar rate that is provided for that plan is very reasonable and really the best for the benefit coverage that is known out in the statewide, and is a very favorable plan. This year we did offer an additional plan offering this year. We asked Pacific Care to break out to a low premium HMO, in which they did. So now we offer a third HMO option for individuals in choice. That HMO is known as the Signature Value 30 plan, and what it does is it offers the premium at a lower rate, but the share of cost is shown in co-payments, is shifted to the individual so they can have a lower premium. So with our medical rates, we were very favorable in the appreciation or the increase in the years, and then we added an additional option to allow individuals to work within their economic range of offering health benefits there. This is the last year of our Pacific Care contract. I wanted to make you aware of that. So early next year, we will be going out in a full RFP for our medical providers. We are looking to extend the activity of the bid for a 5-year commitment is what we're looking to help manage better the long-term activity and growth rate associated with medical trends and with rate increases. The longer period that we have to work with the carrier, the easier we are to work to smooth any significant increases from year to year. So that will be the objective as we move forward on that. The other activities that is before you today is on the dental and vision. The dental carrier, we were at the last of our agreements with Delta Dental, so we did go out with an RFP. All this information was ran, and we received concurrence from labor management through the whole process of developing the RFP as well as the results of the outcomes of the providers. We did select a new provider for dental services. It is Blue Cross is proposed to be our new provider for dental coverage. It will be the same benefit plan with the same longevity incentives that we enjoyed with Delta Dental. So if you've had a plan, the high plan, for a number of years, your percentage coverage increased each year with that coverage. That was a requirement of the RFP, of which Blue Cross will honor. So individuals that have a longevity of coverage, they will receive that same benefit.
And is that done because our perception is that if people stay in the long run, it actually lowers our...
That's correct. People have committed to a higher premium for greater coverage over a period of time with the incentive that their co-pays and deductibles will be consumed or go down over time. We did not want to change a carrier in which everyone would have had to start at zero again and then work their way up and lose that benefit that they have earned over time. And that will be honored, so no one will be penalized in that. We do have a change in carriers, so the carrier does have a different network of dentists in their plan, so there is a disruption associated with it. However, it is the disruption in dental is a little bit different than, per se, a medical provider, very, very much so. But Blue Cross is working hard to market and to bring in the majority of the dentists that our participants go to, so they will not have to either pay a larger copay or possibly switch their provider on that. Blue Cross has committed to a $20,000 commitment that if they do not achieve the top 11 volume dentists, that they will reimburse us or will pay back $20,000 for their commitment in achieving that goal. We did stay with, so we do have two types of dental coverages. We have a PPO plan, high and low coverage, and also an HMO. That was also bid out, and Golden West, who is our current provider, will remain our current provider in there without any change in the coverage. The next item that was a significant change was that we did bid out the vision plan. In the past, the vision was a combined activity dental vision program. We bid those out separately, and this time they will be separate benefit packages with separate providers. We did choose, and the selection was for MES, Medical Eye Services, as our vision coverage plan. And we also, with that award, will break it off. The Pacific Care had a rider or a carry-on vision plan that we chose, that we would separate the coverages into three plans and manage them as separate benefits, so we wouldn't commingle the premiums and the coverages in plans, so we can keep more consistent amongst our medical, dental, and vision. That resulted in a decrease from our current premium, so there is a savings in the next year on our vision plan with a little bit better coverage and benefits offered in that plan. So that's a general highlight of it. There's a lot of details that go into the medical rates that we offer our employees. I feel that the conclusion is we've got a very favorable package this year, and we've contained costs very well, and we're able to offer really fine benefits to our employees at this time. Any questions you may have?
I have one question. On the county HMO, what's the number of people, individuals in that now?
In that plan, there's just under 3,000 people in the county health care plan and about 2,300 in the Pacific Care plan.
The county went up a bit.
The county plan from last year actually decreased about 100, but they've always had more participants than the outside provider. Okay.
Questions? There's a motion and a second. No further questions? Any objection? I agree, excellent work. Challenges with healthcare are obviously national, and I think that I appreciate when I receive the minutes from the Labor Management Healthcare Committee, just to see that there are some good questions being asked and a process in place, and that you're working through a lot of the concerns that come from all sides of the table. So, good work.
Very good.
So
And
ordered, thank you.
I think we should all enjoy one of the rare times when we don't have double-digit increases. At least some of our insurance policies. I don't think this will happen very often. So we should appreciate.
Could I ask a question?
But good work to keep these rates down.
Right.
Go ahead.
The different plans all had a different percentage increase.
That's correct.
And I guess that as I look at how it was determined on the chart on page 4, the opt-outs went up 11%. Is that 11% basically what the average is for all the increases?
Yeah, the opt-out is a formula driven on the increases of the HMO plans, which would include the health plan and the Pacific Care plan. So really that's why it's at 11%, because it's close to an average between those two.
Okay.
Is the way it works.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no further questions. Action's been taken. Thank you for your
Thank
good work.
you.
I'd like to make one comment. First, I want to commend Barry for the outstanding work he's doing, and Barbara Jarnay for the attention you folks have been putting to this particular issue. But to put it into context, first in the community, the three biggest challenges, at least in my view, that are going to face Ventura County have to do with transportation, affordable housing, and health care. And with regard to health care, all of that comes down as a pressure on the county budget for operating that your board has had to deal with, because we not only deal with it for our own employees, but we're the safety net for the community. So as healthcare costs are driven up, we catch it both ways. Your board over the last 4 years has made, some real progress, I think, in straightening out or at least preparing ourselves for the future. We had a situation where we put caps on things, and insurance companies put basically artificial limits on the price 4 years ago, and we ended up in labor contracts that tied to those artificial limits. And when those limits went away, as Supervisor Bennett points out, we really should enjoy this, because it probably won't happen very often. We had years where it was 25 and 35% increases, and it's kind of hard to celebrate any increase, but there is a phenomenon in government that those of us who work with the numbers sort of celebrate, but nobody else appreciates, and that is when things are increasing at a decreasing rate. Not many people pat you on the back. And here is a case where, by working hard and trying to hold that both within the county HMO as well as all of the other providers, that we've made some real progress. And then that ties to the labor relations that I mentioned earlier, because one of the things that unions have to really be concerned about for their members, because social welfare is one of the underpinnings of unionism, is the health care plans. And when those costs go up, they take a lot of heat, and so then they put the pressure back on us. And one of the things that we did in this county is we decided to get rid of some of what were sort of little artificial distinctions between whose health care was most important. It really didn't mean that, but it was the symbolism of giving one group one allowance and another group a different allowance sent the message that you folks with the smaller allowance, we care less about your health than we do the others. So that has been evened out. And when you get into labor relations, particularly in times of shortage, no one is ever really happy with the conclusion or the settlement, but the way in which you get some harmony is for everybody to understand what the principles and the rules are that you're applying, and keeping those on the table. And I think that in the last 4 years we've managed to do that with the cooperation of the unions, the hard work of Barry, and your board's support. So even though this isn't great that we've got an increase, it would be much worse if we weren't doing the things that your board has been supporting for the last 4.5 years. So I want to thank everybody who was involved in that. You in particular, Barry, you're on the front line.
Thank you. All right, I think we have time, since Mr. Ruffin is here, to do one more item, item 54, before we do our 9:30 time certain, and that is authorization of an amendment to the Stoll Park Golf Course Management Agreement. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnston. I'm Paul Ruffin from the General Services Agency. Item 54 is asking for authorization to amend the management agreement between the County of Ventura and Highlands Golf for services provided at Soul Golf Course. In March of '05, we entered into an agreement with Highlands Golf to provide daily management services and also to provide project management service for a restoration and repair project. In June, we came to the board and obtained approval for Phase 1 of that project to proceed. That project has started and it's on track. We're before you today asking that you allow the purchasing agent to amend the agreement so that we can initiate Phase 2, which is replacing the bridge to nowhere. It's roughly a $700,000 increase in cost for the project, and we've been working with the state and local regulatory agencies to make sure that we'll be able to replace the bridge, which will allow the golfers to complete the course in an appropriate manner. This will raise the total project cost to a not to exceed amount of $4.1 million, and it's primarily the work is primarily going to be financed by a grant from the state. The second recommendation is asking authorization that the Auditor Controller's Office can make cash advances up to the amount of $1.8 million at any one given time to allow the work to proceed. And with that, I'm prepared to respond to questions.
Question?
The $104,500 comes from what fund?
The Parks Enterprise Fund, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Not questions, just comments. GSA has been a challenging issue to try to jump on top of and stuff, and GSA's done a very good job of bringing in, appropriate people to manage this and making some intelligent decisions about what battles to fight and which ones not to fight in terms of restoration, and so I just look forward to getting this finally completed, but I want to compliment GSA for what you've done so far with this.
Thank you, Supervisor.
So I'd move the recommended action.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, so ordered.
Thank you.
Good work. Go forth. Golfers need that bridge. Okay, board members. I see all the parties are here, so we'll move ahead. It's 9:30, close enough for our 9:30 time certain item. And it is a pleasure for me to bring this forward to celebrate what will be September 8th, acknowledged as the International Literacy Day. And I see we have our wonderful library director, Sarah Kreisman, who will, and has some friends with her, who will receive this. I'd like to, if I might, cover some highlights on the International Literacy Day and then step down and present the resolution. And have Sarah have some comments, and I think she has a special guest with some comments. Literacy is truly about more than reading and writing. It's how we communicate in our society. It's about our social practices, relationships, about knowledge, language, and culture. International Literacy Day provides our county the opportunity to acknowledge the good work being done and to celebrate the successes that we do have in our county. Adults understand the need to learn to read, so they may actively interface to improve their family, to improve their professions, to communicate with their children and help with the homework as our children are going back to school, make decisions about day-to-day life that will increase their skills and their confidence. 25% of adults in California cannot read or read below a functional literacy level. Most adults are aware of the essential need to acquire the skills to learn to read, giving them the opportunity to acquire employment, to be promoted, provide them the opportunity to fully participate in our society. So we know it's a crucial component of individual and family success. The Ventura County Library has maintained a literacy program, the Reading Program for Adults, since 1984, has provided a caring and a welcoming place and an atmosphere to assist adults in their pursuit to read. During 2004, the Ventura County Reading Program for Adults provided 150 tutors and helped 275 learners to start and or finish their dream to improve their life with the ability to read. So it is a pleasure to present this proclamation on behalf of the board to celebrate September 8th as International Literacy Day. Certainly to commend and congratulate our Ventura County Library Reading Program for Adults for its efforts and many successes in improving literacy in our county. Literacy for all and thus education for all is this year's motto, and truly speaks to the challenges of helping our adults who wish to improve their lifestyle and their skills. I've been very proud to work with and be certainly in tune with the reading program for adults that we have in our county system, and I know some of our other library systems do. I know specifically the Blanchard Library in Santa Paula has a very active literacy for adults program. So I'd like to step down and present this to Sterrett, invite Sterrett up and introduce your guest. And
thank you very much, Chair Long and board members, for your recognition of the upcoming International Literacy Day and of the library's reading program for adults. I'd like to introduce the manager of the program, Carol Chapman. Thank you. We have two of our wonderful AmeriCorps volunteers here, Josephine Deering and Neil Robinson. And Neil was the tutor has been the tutor for our very special guest, and that is Lucina Newman. And Lucina is an adult learner who is a finalist in the Writer to Writer contest that's being sponsored by the California Center for the Book. So we're all very proud of her. I would like to comment that over the years, the reading program for adults has tutored thousands of people in that 25% that you mentioned, and we have also attempted to work in the jail and in our jails and prisons. The estimate of the people who cannot read goes as high as 80%. So that's obviously a contributing factor to why they ended up where they did. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for this for this opportunity, like those programs that are available to us that will really really help others and myself, and I really make a difference in my life. Able to read and write and be fit in the society and do like Americans people do, like be social and be reading with my kids and notes from the school and all that stuff. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. All right, back to our regular agenda. Then we go to item 55, ISD item, contract with a consulting group to provide supplemental technical support. Good morning, Mr. Carroll.
Chair Long, members of the board, Mr. Johnson, Matt Carroll, Chief Information Officer. Agenda item 55 presents your board with a brief status on the pending conclusion of the VCHRP project, as well as recommends your board approval of a contract with a consulting group to provide supplemental technical support to the ISD staff in support of VCHRP. As noted, this contract will provide for the conclusion of technical knowledge transfer to ISD staff, the ongoing support of the system until the completion of that technical knowledge transfer, completion of 5 post-project system enhancements, and finally support of the county's first open enrollment on VCHRP. With regard to the project status, as noted in the board letter, the project is wrapping up this quarter, early next quarter, and the majority of project objectives and milestones, as previously briefed to your board, with the exception of the 2 items, knowledge transfer and ongoing decentralization of employee time data entry. They have been completed at this time. As promised to your board, I think over 2 years ago, it has been a bit of a challenging and rocky road. However, with the completion of Phase 2, the county is well positioned to take advantage really of what we call the icing on the cake of the project. Individual employees as well as departments and agencies can now take advantage of such things as employee self-service, the pending open enrollment, and the Authoria project, which was approved by your board in January. It's very much related in that it will, for the first time, provide an unprecedented level of information and assistance to employees in navigating the somewhat complex decisions associated with benefits open enrollment. Back to the recommended contract, as noted, no additional appropriations are being requested at this time. The CEO's office will be working with the Auditor Controllers and Human Resource Division to monitor their budgets as the ISF charges flow back into those two budgets, and as needed during the course of the year, return to your board with any appropriations that may be required. As also stated in the board letter, the Project Steering Committee, which will now be known as the VCHRP Steering Committee, will continue to exist. And over the course of the next 9 months, the remainder of this fiscal year, we'll get some post-project workload experience with the technical staff, and the Project Steering Committee or the System Steering Committee will continue to monitor the workload and, if necessary, work through the budget process next year to make any technical staffing adjustments such as we did in the functional areas last year. If we do this, likely we will come back to your board with a recommendation not for permanent staff adjustments, but potentially to put aside some ongoing funding for contractors to handle peak workload issues such as major MOU changes and vendor-required system upgrades as they're required. With regard to the future, the system is relatively stable for the next 3 to 5 years. As you know, PeopleSoft was purchased by Oracle. Oracle has pretty much put a hold on the application at this point in time, which is a good thing. It gets us off some of the treadmill of having to do major system implementations. In the 3 to 5 year time frame, they're coming up with their successor project, our successor system called Fusion. At that point in time, we will likely be looking at a major system upgrade. And typically with these systems, every 3 to 5 years, you have to do a major system upgrade. And this one has actually deferred it a couple years for us. At that time, we'll probably come back to your board with a recommendation to make that upgrade to the Fusion product. And those typically run in the low 7 figures, the $1 to $2 million range to do a significant upgrade. But that's, again, 3 to 5 years in the future. So with that, I'm available to answer any questions as the other two members of the Project Steering Committee, and request your board approve the recommended contract.
Other questions?
I don't have questions, just a comment. Given the investment that we've already made, the $12 million investment, it is prudent. I think we never like to do this, but it's prudent to make sure that we have the transfer of the technical knowledge over in terms of doing that. And overall, this has been, by comparison to what other people have done when they tried to implement this kind of stuff, it's been a very successful project. Mm-hmm. The other thing is it just reminds me of how our technical demands are going to just, we're in an era where it's 3 to 5 years, and that might get shorter, but the technical demands are just going to, we have to keep budgeting for them. It's not like the old days where you bought a system and 25 years later you did something with it and stuff. So, mm-hmm. But that is an added demand that's going to be a challenge for us to keep up with, just fiscally. So I'd move the recommended action.
Motion and second. No further questions, concerns, no objections. So ordered. Thank you.
Thank you for your
good work. Thanks. Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, just one comment. I wanted to commend Matt, Barbara, and particularly our Auditor Controller for the work for the last several years on a very complex problem, and how important it is. I really appreciate the fact that when you run into issues that you bring them to our office and don't just to sort of struggle with them without sharing them, because this is kind of the insurance policy to be sure that the good work that's been done to this point will be taken care of, and will also support the auditor's office, who originally had all of this stuff and has been working feverishly with everybody else trying to make this a smooth transition over the years. And I think she's done a really good job at it. I do not anticipate that even if the costs within the individual budget units goes up, that it will exceed the original appropriations throughout the county, and I'll bring the issue back if there should be a need for a budget adjustment in the spring, and I'm confident that it'll be well within the parameters that your board approved.
Thank you again.
Christine.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, item 56, policy matter, and this is mine, to appoint Gabino Aguirre to the Commission on Human Concerns. And just a quick note, Murray Rosenbluth served on that commission for years and has done an outstanding job. And as all of you know, the commission has done some reorganization. They have a new executive director, and I think that they're on track to do very good work in our community and really complete the goals and missions of the commission. Dr. Aguirre is excited about serving. That's my motion. Motion and second. Any objection? Hearing none. So ordered. Item, yes, sure.
Louise back there, somebody else I should have mentioned and commended, the one who was really the front line of this whole thing on the payroll transition, Louise Webster from the Auditor Controller. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 57, policy item. Supervisor Bennett and I carried this forward. You want to bring it in, Steve?
Sure.
Comments first?
We, I think at the retreat, study session, whatever we want to call the day and a half that we had, one of the highlights for me was to hear from all of our department heads, and we asked them, what are the things that they're feeling good about in terms of their department, and what are the areas that are challenges that they have in terms of being as productive as they'd like to be. One of those challenges was to try to increase the speed with which their vacancies are filled, and so I think it's very appropriate for us to ask our CEO to, when you had that many department heads make that a request, I think it's very appropriate to ask our CEO to report on some recommendations on how to speed that up so that we can respond to the department heads, essentially their request for some help in that area.
Yeah, if I might respond, I think that's a really important issue for all of us. The department heads did mention that, and there, to some degree, it's a timing thing, that some actions were already underway, so I appreciate the fact that you've asked for a report back on what's being done. 4 years of budget reductions, staff reductions, was a major pressure on both the HR department as well as all of the line departments. When you couple that with this kind of a demographic bulge in the retirements and turnover, we now have a kind of an extraordinary period ahead of us that's going to require a lot more effort in the recruitment the recruitment programming. What we need is we had to change the way in which we were approaching this. Instead of trying to do it all centrally, what Barbara Jornay's office has done is they've distinguished between those things that are common to the whole organization, which he'll continue to do, and then to identify the specialized classes and recruitments, and we decentralize that to the departments. And then what Barbara will do is audit those departments just to be sure they're complying with all the civil service procedures and regs, and allow the departments who have the greatest motivation to move this process faster to actually do that. And I think the report will show that a lot of progress has been made, but we've got a big challenge ahead of us. So we accept this as an opportunity to tell you what we've been doing and what we need to do.
Good.
If I could add to the comment, I agree with what you've said. HR really took a reduction in personnel, and as you said, it was a great contributor to the issues that we have. But I want to commend Barbara for working under difficult situations there with a reduction in staff.
Supervisor Parks, comment?
It definitely was one of the strong messages we heard from our directors, that we are having, it's difficult to fill these positions, but also in terms of recruiting and bringing folks in, I think we need to do what we can in a greater outreach. I realize this is, about what we have authority over, which is the portions of the county agencies. But I also note that we're having significant problems with our sheriff deputies, too. And I know this particular agenda item isn't reflective of that, but I think that we should also request from the sheriff if there are things that we can do to assist his efforts, because we do have some significant shortages. There's so much I guess they have to reduce by so many. You can get 1,000 people applying. You end up with, one or two people that are qualified and go through the program. If there are things that the board can do, I would be most interested in hearing from the sheriff on that too.
We will include that. And the Sheriff's Administration has for several months been working with our office with trying to come up with more innovative ways to approach it. Goes back to affordable housing, benefits, wages, all of which, kind of work together. But we will include a report back to you on that.
I appreciate that.
And I appreciate the idea that you gave earlier that housing is one of the big issues. Affordable housing, and let's not forget also farm worker housing, which is really low cost.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just want certainly support the request, and I know the CEO has already undertaken some of the work and analysis, and the challenges have been noted, and they're not going to get easier. And the attempt here is to really look at what we do internally and remove barriers where we can internally to the process so that we are competitive in the market, because we are competing with the Ventura County market and the greater Ventura County and Santa Barbara, LA region for employees. And as we see our management team aging and retirements occurring and recruitment gets more difficult, I think it'll be good to have a fresh report that says here's what we can do to not get in the way of ourselves, but also to look at how we can be market-wise in going after what we need to do in the way of county employees for the future. So.
If I can
Yes.
add also, you're right in terms of certainly what we're competing against with other counties in the area, also all the cities, which often have more funds available than the county does, but there are a lot of benefits to county employment that I see that are superior to city employment. Also, there has been some controversy about a suggestion of maybe, again, back to the Sheriff's Department, of reducing the high quality demands that we require, qualifications. And I was just reading a headline over the weekend. I think LA was looking at reducing their qualifications for what it takes to be a sheriff deputy. And I know that there's no way that Ventura County is looking at in any way reducing the qualification requirements, because you do want to make sure that you have the best in that role. It's a very responsible role. And I just wanted to point out that we do need to do what we can in terms of broadening that net of recruitment for both our county agencies as well as our law enforcement.
Okay. And a second. No further discussion, objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for the work you've undertaken. Item 50, we'll move ahead. I think we have time. We can cover that. I'm sorry, item 58. Approval to establish a multi-way stops at the intersection of Deer Hill. Mr. Britt.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnson, Butch Britt, Public Works Agency. I think the board letter is pretty straightforward. You do have to make a choice. And I just ask if there's any questions of the members of the board.
I don't have any questions. I thank Butch for bringing this before us. The homeowners associations in the area, the Santa Rosa, the Oak Park MAC, have all requested that. They actually wanted a couple of stop signs, and this is, I think, a good compromise in beginning the process and getting one stop sign at the intersection of Deer Hill and Deer Brook. I think that will help both in terms of visibility issues and also help to avoid conflicts between those two intersections. So I would go ahead and move the multi-way stop sign installation at Deer Hill and Deer Brook.
And I'll second this for discussion purposes first, because could you, Public Works doesn't recommend it, and can you give us the sort of, so that we get it on the record, your rationale for why, over Public Works?
Again, this came from the residents in the area, from the homeowner association as well as the MAC, and their main objection is the problem they have with speeding on Deer Hill, and that it is a hill, and that this would allow for cars to have to take a break from that speeding downhill. And I note that there are other areas that I know of, for example, and you may also, situations like this, I can think of a couple of locations in my city where stop signs have put in, four-way stop signs have put in areas where you don't think that there's enough cross-traffic to warrant it, but they're obviously being put there because of the fact that you're on a hill and you've got too much higher speeds than would be normal if it weren't for a hill. So I think that is the whole emphasis of this.
Thank you for getting that on the record, so my second stands.
Supervisor Flynn, did you have comments? These are difficult to do, and you know, I know that there's been an instant in my community where I carried the same thing. I brought the letter in because I knew it was not in within the warrants and the conditions that our public works and experts usually authorize these signs. And they're always difficult because the community, they live within the area. They feel that they know the area better than engineers do, and engineers deal with numbers and stats and warrants, and it doesn't always address what may be behavior patterns and community behaviors. Speeds are usually addressed by the Highway Patrol, but we also know that they're limited in their resources in covering all of our rural areas where we have conditions like this. So these are always tough, and I would generally defer to the supervisor and certainly to the community group in support of this. It's just has its own risk, I think.
I did second the motion, and I'm in favor of doing this. I would, just in terms of the process, I think that I think it's odd to have Public Works bring the letter forward saying they don't recommend doing something. Public Works should bring a letter forward. So I think this in the future to be if the supervisor brings a letter forward, Public Works can say they don't recommend it. That's just
right.
That's just a procedural issue.
I think that would be a better way also.
Okay.
Any other discussion? There's a motion and a second. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay. Item 59, report of the use of emergency contract authority of Santa Clara River at Santa Paula Airport.
Good morning, Chair Long, board members, Mr. Johnston. For the record, my name is Jeff Pratt. I'm with the Watershed Protection District, and I'm here to ask your consideration of a continuing use of your emergency contracting authority at the Santa Paula Airport. We feel that it's necessary in order to get the protections in place prior to the rainy season. We still have the rock to go. Bidding the project or using the normal procurement procedures would cost us at least 60 days. So, staff, I respectfully request your permission to continue using that authority.
Questions? Okay. There's a motion, and I'd like to second the motion. The staff has done excellent work on this. We need to be able to keep this to be flexible, to move quickly, to get this project complete. We've got a couple little challenges left, but they've made great work, great progress. So motion and second. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good work. Item 60, ratification of district acceptance of Verizon work order.
Good morning,
morning.
Chair Long, members of the board, Mr. Johnson. I'm Steve Williams with Public Works. This again is a district watershed protection district item, and we are requesting that your board ratify district staff's acceptance on August 5th of a Verizon work order, which enabled the Verizon to go forward and do some preliminary relocation work in connection with the LA Avenue Drain project. The work order committed the district to payment of just about $33,000, which was Verizon's initial estimate for this first phase of the work, and it did enable Verizon to get started on the project, begin and move the project forward in a timely manner. We're also recommending that you approve and authorize the Director of Public Works to execute a final relocation agreement with Verizon, which will cover all remaining costs to complete Verizon's responsibilities with respect to the project. I recommend certainly that you ratify and approve the agreements.
Questions? Seeing none?
Move it.
Motion and a second?
Thank
Was that
you.
a second? That was a second. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item 61, Resource Management Agency, authorization to apply for a State Department Health Services grant. Good morning.
Good morning. Robert Gallagher with the Environmental Health Division. We're requesting your board's authorization to apply for a state grant that will provide $25,000 in additional funding for mandated ocean water quality monitoring for this fiscal year. Glad to answer any questions.
And that would get us to full year-round monitoring?
No, this is just for the mandated portion, which is a 7-month period. The grant's limited to that.
What's going to take to get to full?
Well, we do have an active, what's called a supplemental environmental project application with the Regional Water Quality Control Board for potential fine monies to come in that would pay specifically for the non-mandated portion. The other thing we can do is just wait for the next contract cycle to go through and try and get the state to pay more for our year-round program. But right now, it's just limited to what's mandated.
Okay. What's the cost difference?
For the non-mandated?
Yes.
I estimate it's about $65,000 to $70,000 if we're going to do it this year. It's for 5 months.
Great, thank you. Move the recommended action.
Motion and second. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, so ordered.
Thank you.
Keep going after those grants. Item 62, Sheriff's Department authorization for ratification of 2 grant applications. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnston. Before you, it's a request from the sheriff to ratify applications we have filed with the United States Department of Justice for 2 grants totaling $70,000 to enhance our DNA program at our crime lab. The monies that we will generate from these grants will be used to purchase supplies and to upgrade some of our equipment in our DNA laboratory. And we respectfully recommend your approval or ratification.
Second.
Motion and a second. No further discussion, questions, objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our correspondence agenda.
Move to receive and file.
I'd like to second that, and also wanted to mention, we had several letters urging the board to take a position on LNG, and I just wanted to comment that I had recently read, I believe it was the city of Long Beach, that the city council was going to put an item on relative to their opposition to LNG, and they immediately got threatened with a lawsuit from an LNG provider for potential bias of the city council if they were to take that vote. So I think we just have to make sure that we realize that we have that same potential of getting slapped with a suit if we jump out ahead of any potential application that might come before us.
We did try that once, and and we were advised by the county council not to go forward with it.
I would like to just comment on the first correspondence
It's
item.
one of my great days.
The first correspondence item from the letter thanking us for our thoughts and suggestions regarding the special election, the cost to local government, and I appreciate the timely reply, but I certainly don't appreciate the response. And that said, CSAC has certainly also gone on record, and I would expect out of the 58 counties, probably 58 have all gone on record regarding the special election costs. So, okay, was there a motion to receive and file the correspondence agenda? There was, and a second, and no objection on that. So ordered. We now have a 10 o'clock that we could do. We're close enough to 10 o'clock. We're close enough to 10 o'clock. And that 10 o'clock is an item for water rate adjustments and revisions to rules and regulations, Lake Sherwood, Supervisor District Number 2. Good morning, Mr. Pacala.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnston, Reddy Pacala with Water and Sanitation Department representing Lake Sherwood Community Services District. District provides water service to community of Lake Sherwood. District imports 100% of its water supply from Cayugas Municipal Water District. As your board is aware, Cayugas has increased their water rates by about 10% effective January 1st, 2005. This was in response to ERAF shift of about $3.8 million from Cayugas O&M budget, and also Cayugas had a 6.7% increase from Metropolitan Water District for water quality improvements. We reviewed our operations and maintenance budget for Lake Sherwood Community Services District, and we are recommending an 8% commodity water rate increase to offset the increases in imported water supply. Based on the average water usage by the district customers, the proposed rates will mean an increase of about $3 per month per residence. We have mailed notices to all of our customers on August 19th, and as of 9 o'clock this morning, we have not received any calls from our customers. We are recommending approval of the 8% commodity rate increase and adjustments or revisions to the rules and regulations for the Lake Sherwood Community Services District. This concludes my verbal presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to respond.
Are there any questions for staff? This is a public hearing, so we'll open it up. But are there questions for staff at this time? Okay, I don't hear any, and this is a public hearing. I don't have cards submitted. Anyone from the public wishing to speak? Public hearing is closed.
I'll move the agenda item.
Motion and second. Any objection to the item? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the work. Okay, board members, that completes our regular agenda. We have now a closed session to go into. Pretty fast, huh? Yes. We'll go into closed session. Do we expect an announcement?
Yes, we do.
Ooh. Ooh. Oh. Okay. We're back out after our closed session, and we have one announcement. Mr. County Counsel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the matter of Carrie Nelson Hansen, et cetera, versus Next Step Development, et cetera, et al., Ventura County Superior Court Case Number CIV 229568, the Board has voted unanimously to settle all claims at no cost to the county. The county has agreed to release any claims it might have against the plaintiff in exchange for dismissal of the lawsuit against it. Thank you.
We are adjourned. Have a good rest of the week, Labor Day weekend. See you on the 13th.